Pete Alonso is red hot right now, proving exactly why he's a player the Mets should look to sign long term. How much money will it cost, and will a deal get done? We'll discuss all of that on today's edition of Locked On Mets.
You are Locked On Mets, your daily New York Mets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. You're watching Locked On Mets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Ryan Finkelstein. If you want to find any of my work, follow me on Twitter at FinkelsteinRyan. I also find some of my writing at justbaseball.com, where I work as the managing editor. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. At the trade deadline, for the first time in his career, Pete Alonso's names were floated in trade rumors. The Mets listened on Alonso. Now, sure, there was no conversations that made it very far, and the asking price was probably astronomical, but it did allow fans and Alonso and really everyone to understand that a decision has to come on this player very soon. Pete Alonso will hit free agency beyond the 2024 season, and while I still doubt the Mets will trade him before then, the question about if and when they can extend him is more pertinent than ever. And Alonso lately has been red hot and is again proving why he is one of the safest run-producing items in all of baseball. He's a guy that you can plug into your lineup and pretty much guarantee that you're going to get 40 home runs and 120 runs driven in, year out. That is how good Pete Alonso is at his best, because this year he's been at his quote-unquote worst at times. And yet, with one hot streak, he's once again on pace for a 50 home run season where he drives in over 120. And looks amazing right now at the dish. You got to remember the full context of his season. He was great early on, ends up having that wrist injury, probably, fought his way back in the lineup too soon, but you can't blame him for that. And after a period of struggle, he's right back to being Pete Alonso. Over his last 15 games, he's hit 9 home runs, has driven in 24. If he hits 4 more home runs this month, he'll have his third month this season where he hits 9 home runs at least. And that's really the sweet spot for a real slugger. If you're hitting 9 to 10 home runs a month, and there's 6 months in a season, you could do the math on how you can quickly get up to 50, 60 home runs in a year. And Pete Alonso is one of a handful of guys in Major League Baseball that can sniff 60. I mean, the list is very small. It's Shohei Ohtani, it's Aaron Judge, and Pete Alonso might make the short list. I don't know how many guys beyond that could do it. You could say Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but he hasn't been as consistent of a home run threat as some of the other names mentioned there. Obviously, if Giancarlo Stanton was ever healthy, that type of player, sure, but I think those 50 home run days are beyond him. Yordan Alvarez, there's other guys, but Pete Alonso, I think, has to be third on that list behind Ohtani and Judge, arguably the two best hitters in the game right now. So, and yes, Alonso as a complete hitter, not on their level, but as a home run threat, he's right there. And during this period of the last 15 games, he's had 3 different games where he's hit multiple home runs and has driven in at least 5. And this series against the Cubs, the first one the Mets have won since the deadline, he carried them to a series victory in a year where the Mets could have gone the entire season without winning a series, and they might not win another one. I mean, I certainly don't like their chances against the Braves this weekend, but here was Pete Alonso against the Cubs. Game 1 leads them to a victory, 6 runs batted in, 2 home runs. Game 2, he hits a home run to give the Mets an early lead, a 2-run homer, and unfortunately, the team couldn't score any runs beyond that. Today, David Peterson was on the mound, didn't make it out of the 4th inning, put the Mets in a 2-0 hole early, but Alonso helped them climb out of it. He tied the game, drove in Francisco Lindor, hit a 2-run homer, and the Mets were able to rally in the 6th inning. Jeff McNeil hit a solo homer, Abraham Almonte doubled, and then Jonathan Ruiz drove him in, and the Mets had a 4-2 lead. The bullpen was good in this game. Grant Hartwig, 2 1/3, scoreless. Trevor Gott and Josh Walker each pitched a good inning, and Josh Walker looked great. I mean, struck out Cody Bellinger. He looked really, really strong, and he's one of those guys I want to see getting opportunities in leverage and getting opportunities as much as possible because he could be a piece for this bullpen into the future. So it's good to see him pitch well. Adam Ottavino, terrible. Did his best to blow the game and blow the series for the Mets. Gave up a solo home run to lead off the ninth. Gave up a base hit and a walk. Left a couple runners on, had no outs. The Mets had to go to Phil Bickford, a guy that they just picked up to absorb some salary and just get an arm off of waivers at the deadline. And Bickford delivered a save. It was remarkable. Got an out on a sac bunt. Had 2 big strikeouts that sandwiched a walk, so he eventually did walk to load the bases, but got the strikeout to get out of it, holding on to that 1-run lead, and the Mets win a series. But again, they're only in that position because of Pete Alonso. He has been playing out of his mind, and he is a guy that can carry even the worst of teams to victories. And if you plug him on a good team, like we saw last year, he will clean up RBIs and he'll help lead a squad to 101 wins. Pete Alonso as a force in the middle of your lineup is one that you don't have to think about too much. He's a guy that's durable, going to play 150 games a season. The defense at first base, whether metrics like him or not, you watch the eye test. He's a good defensive first baseman at this point. He feels the position well. He is really good around the bag. He's really good making those scoops and everything else that you want to see. So I think that dependability that he brings at a position, it is more valuable than a DH type, because he can hold down first base, which allows DH to be more open to really help the maneuverability of your roster. So when you think about the Mets long term, it's very hard for me to say, yeah, let this Alonso situation play out. But the Mets are in an interesting spot because they haven't got a deal done up to this point. They now are in a position where leverage is not on their side in negotiations with Pete Alonso. So you basically just have to pay him market value. Getting him to sign an extension is not going to give you some hometown discount. I am curious with how everything just unfolded at the deadline, what Alonso's feelings are for the franchise. I still think he wants to stick around. And I wonder if he's more motivated to get a deal done because he doesn't want to leave, or if he's still of the mindset that he should just play for a contract and hit the open market. If the Mets want to keep him, they should be the highest bidder. There's a lot of different layers to the Pete Alonso extension conversation. I want to continue to get to them in just a minute. Before we do, today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Have you ever been in a situation where you want to go to the game, but finding tickets last minute is just too stressful, so you decide not to go? Well, Gametime is a fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater near you with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, so you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for all the fun you're going to have at the game. The Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seats before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds. 2 taps, you're all set. Tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. You can snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime by downloading the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. The New York Mets play the Atlanta Braves at 7:10 Eastern Time Friday night. Catch every pitch in the Mets hometown broadcast. SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Mets. Pete Alonso, if you look at his numbers this season, and really over the last 3 years, the guy has become remarkably consistent. Okay. His average might, go up and down. So might the on-base percentage, but the slugging department, it's the same. 519 slug in 2021, 518 slug in 2022. This year, 526 slug. Home runs, 37 in 2021, 40, 2022, 34 in 2023. He is just a walking 850 plus OPS. who's going to hit 40 every year. He's going to play 150 games, going to drive in over 100. That's what you can count on with Pete Alonso. When you think about free agency, here's a guy that is really sitting in a spot of real leverage when it comes to his future, because he got to play right at the beginning of 2019, so he didn't have any service time manipulation against him. He's been productive from the start, and his arbitration money now allows him to really just say, why not play this last year out? Because he made $7.4 million in year one of arbitration. This year is making 14.5. Every chance, and he's gonna get another $7 million bump, if not more. He's at least gonna make $20 million next year. I would not be shocked if it's closer to like $22 million. So you look at the Mets, if they were to put an offer on the table for, let's just say they did the Joey Votto contract from years ago. Joey Votto at age 28 signed a 10-year, $225 million deal. It's a contract I wanted the Mets to sign Alonso to before this season when they had a little more leverage to negotiate. Something along those lines. You have to go back to those episodes, and I think I wrote an article on it, but there's different contracts you look at. There's the Freddie Freeman contract, his first one with the Braves, his one with the Dodgers, the Goldschmidt contract, the Votto contract. $22.5 million. That's out the window for Pete Alonso now. Okay, that's a pipe dream. That's not happening, because he's probably going to make that or close to it next year. And why not play on it for year one and say, all right, I'm going to bet on myself. You go into your free agent year, and if Alonso stays healthy and he gets hot and he has a good year, he could hit 60 home runs like Aaron Judge did and go into the market and expect to get paid $35 million a season if he wanted to. Aaron Judge is making 40. Now, he's an outfielder. He could play center field and gives you great defense out there. That's a lot more value than Alonso provides. Alonso's best season is like a 4-win guy. Judge's, he's like an 11-win guy. It's a completely different ball player. But $22.5 million, again, is out the window. Any contract for Pete Alonso long-term has to start at $25 million. Freddie Freeman is making $27 a year. Paul Goldschmidt, $26 million a year. Matt Olson is the lower end of the spectrum, but he gets traded to the Braves from Oakland. I believe he might have still been 2 years away from free agency, and he signs for $21 million per to play for his hometown team growing up. It was a match made in heaven. It's why the Braves are such a smart organization. They target guys that want to be there, and that's why they got contracts done with him and Matt Olson and anyone else that they are able to sign long-term at a discount. The Mets aren't in that position to get the hometown discount anymore. It's just not going to happen. But paying a market value now instead of waiting is also wise, because if you let it play out, things can get out of control, and you also could lose them. And you also put yourself in a position where you're at the deadline next year. Let's just say the Mets are, again, not in the mix, and they're more of a rebuilding team with young players, and they're trying to see who's going to be a big part of 2025. And you're sitting at that deadline with Pete Alonso as a rental, and all of a sudden you think about trading him a little more than you ever did before. It's all right, well, let's get as much value as you can for him. But if you do that, you burn the bridge, and you're likely not getting him to sign in free agency. So it's a really complicated game. When I just try to set a dollar amount on it before we get into if a deal should happen or will happen. Pete Alonso turns 29 years old in December. A 7-year contract will take him through his age 35 season. You set that number at $25 million. It's looking at a 7-year, $175 million deal. That's the Marcus Semien contract. Would be pretty fair value, I think, for both sides. But I don't think Pete's signing for that. I don't think Pete's signing for anything that doesn't start with a 2 on his 9-figure deal. Now, again, you look back to Joey Votto's contract, a 10-year deal. I think the Mets might have to go there if they want Pete to sign, basically giving him 9 of his free agent years, which is a long contract. But Alonso, being durable as he has been, I think you feel pretty confident in being able to play, well into his 30s and be an effective hitter for a long time. That's a 10-year, $250 million contract. So you look at, the pros and cons of it. You're paying whatever it is, say, I guess $75 million more for 3 additional seasons. And that probably gets a deal done. If it's a 7-year deal, I think you probably have to start the dollar amount of $30 million. And so you weigh that. Is a 7-year, $210 million contract worth it? Or maybe you do get the discount and it's 7 years and 200, which would get you obviously north of 25, but shade less than 30 million a season, somewhere in the middle there. I think that the exact dollar amount is hard to predict right now, but it's in that range. It's in the 25 to $30 million range, and it's between 7 to 10 years that you got to be talking about if you're going to sign Pete. Well, I guess the question is that worth it? Or is that worth it to sign now? I guess is the better question. Or do you let it play out? Well, in his free agent class, you got Paul Goldschmidt at 37, Jose Altuve at 35, Alex Bregman at 30, and you got Juan Soto at 26 years old. So if you can only give one a contract, what would you do if you're the Mets? Which player, if you had the opportunity right now to sign Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, which one would you take? I think most people would say Juan Soto, but even that conversation has more layers to it. And I think when you really, dig through all of them, you come to the conclusion that the New York Mets should do whatever they can to sign Pete Alonso to a contract because he is a homegrown guy who can continue to be the face of your franchise along with Francisco Lindor, who is a safe bet to have a very high floor, or if you put the right team around him and Lindor, I think more times than not, you're going to end up with a playoff team and a team that can make noise in the big moments. And I think Alonso is a guy that in a playoff situation could carry a team and win series, because we just saw what he did against the Cubs in a 3-game series where the Mets are nowhere near the same level, or the Cubs are a team that is playing significantly better baseball at this moment, that even threw out better pitchers throughout this series outside of maybe game 1. But, the Mets are going to have to make a decision. And honestly, I would not be looking so far ahead that you offend the bird in hand, and the bird in hand being Alonso. And I would do everything you can right now to be meeting with his agents and working to hammer out a contract, because it would be a sign of good faith for him and for the franchise moving forward and for the fans, really. And that's part of what I want to discuss next. Before we do, though, another word from our sponsors. The New York Mets play the Atlanta Braves 7:10 Eastern Time Friday night. Catch every pitch of the Mets hometown broadcast with Sirius XM on the SXM app. Just search Mets. Now, if you're looking at 2025 and the Mets' free agent strategy going into that season, Juan Soto is the long-rumored free agent that makes the most sense. A guy that will hit free agency at, 26 years old, who is clearly a better hitter than Pete Alonso. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Pete is better. Soto has never finished the season with an on-base percentage below 400. His career slugging percentage is 524. His career on-base percentage is 423. So his career OPS is 947. Alonso's is 877. He is a significantly better hitter. But with that said, in about 100 less games, Pete Alonso's hit 32 more home runs. He has 181 compared to Soto at 149. Alonso is a safe power bat who plays. Juan Soto is a safe, great bat all around who plays. Now, defensively, if you're thinking about long-term building, Juan Soto, to me, is not an outfielder long-term. He's not a good outfielder now. Maybe he can play first base one day, and maybe that's his long-term home. We're seeing Bryce Harper, because of injury, play some first base now. Maybe Juan Soto can make a similar transition. And so in that case, as much as Soto is going to get corner outfielder money, these could be similar players. Now, when you put it under that lens and you think about the fact that Juan Soto has already turned down a $400 million contract, the prices start to lean Alonso. Because again, I really feel like if the Mets put a 10-year, $250 million contract in front of Pete Alonso that had, incentives for breaking hitting 65 home runs or just 60 home run seasons or even 50 home run seasons for MVP, for all that type of stuff that are baked into the contract, where if Alonso's performing at his best, he can even make a little bit more money. And you entice him with that type of a deal right now, I think he signs on the dotted line. Imagine trying to get Juan Soto to sign a 10-year, $250 million contract. You get laughed out of the room. The starting number for him is going to be Judge. It's going to be $40 million a season. And the years, 13 years, maybe, who knows? That contract can get out of control. Now, you could say, hey, the Mets should just sign both of them. I really think long term, the more you actually think about it, the Juan Soto dream is that it is a dream. The Padres could extend him. They could sign him in free agency. He's been there for, at that point, it'd be over 2 full years if everything plays out, if he hadn't signed an extension. And it's just like, Mets fans, we were all dreaming about Manny Machado potentially. And then at the end of the offseason, boom, extended. So you can't count that. Pete Alonso is the bird in hand. And Pete Alonso is a guy who could be a Hall of Famer with a Mets cap. That's not outside the realm of possibility whatsoever. Look at where he's at with home runs. Let's say he gets to 50 this year. He'll be sitting at 196 on his career. So early next season, he hits his 200th in a Mets uniform. He's going to break that home run record for the Mets if he stays very quickly in that contract. And then just imagine if he were to average even 35 home runs a season over the next 10 years if he signed to an extension right now. He'd clear 500 home runs in his career by a wide margin. You're already in Cooperstown talk right there. Let's say he averages 40 a year, which you say is crazy, but if Alonso hits 50 this year and he has seasons with 50 and seasons with 30, an average of 40 a year is not nuts. If he stayed healthy, distinct possibility. Again, I said, probably sitting right on the edge of 200 this year. What's 400? 40 over 10 years. 40 home runs a year over 10. Plus 200. That's 600. So Pete Alonso is a guy, and again, this is lofty numbers, everything breaking right, staying healthy, all of it. But a dude that has the potential to hit 600 home runs, which is an even rarer group of players that have reached that mark. To me, that's the type of guy that you want to keep in your uniform, putting up numbers, putting up a ridiculous career where one day you're hanging his number in the rafters and he's, if everything breaks right, going into Cooperstown as a Met. But even if not, a guy that will be in that conversation with David Wright, Francisco Lindor. Honestly, Mets fans will hate that now, but let's be real about what he's probably going to do over the life of this contract. This is a guy that could really be in a special place in Mets history long term. And it's going to suck if you see him do it on a different ball club. If, I don't even know what the landing spot is for him. If Pete Alonso signs a big deal with the Red Sox or something, or the Yankees, Rizzo will be a free agent at the same time Alonso will, I believe. So I just think this is a deal you come to him with now. And you look at their payroll in 2025, it's $120 million right now. And that's committed to, that's not arbitration or anything else. It's just the players on guaranteed MLB deals, extensions, long-term money. It's Lindor, Marte, Nimmo, McNeil, Senga, Diaz. That's the group that is on the books in 2025. Marte falls off of it 2026. Diaz and Senga both have player options. So long term, if you pencil in $25 million for Pete Alonso a year, I don't think that is a number that hurts you as far as what other spending you can do. Even if it's 10 years, 260, I don't think that bothers you. And if it's 7 years, 210, and it's $30 million a season, again, I don't think that bothers you. So if I'm the Mets, I am leveraging all of what has happened this season into coming to Pete Alonso's representation, whether it's in season or right after season, when other teams are playing in October and Alonso has to reflect and making it clear to Pete, we love what you do in the community. We love how you represent this franchise. We want you to be right there with Francisco Lindor as the pillars of our organization, along with Brandon Nimmo as well. That's what the Mets should be doing. And it would be, again, a great sign to the fan base that I think would really be some nice PR at a time when the Mets could use it, which is why I think in season would be even better for the Mets if they could actually get a deal done. But you have a player in Alonso that just saw his first real reality check in the business, where he had these larger-than-life teammates in Max Scherzer, Justin Verlander that were traded for the future. And unlike Lindor and Nimmo had the contracts, Alonso was left just baffled and unsure of his own future with the ball club. This is the time to say, look, you are part of this. And I honestly think he'd respond to it. I think if you gave him that 10-year, $250 million contract with all the bells and whistles, the incentives, the no trade clause, all of it, you give him enough security and you really sold him on the vision where this franchise is going. Not dissimilar to when the Mets got David Wright to sign a long-term contract where the future of the franchise was not clear. I think you could find yourself in a position where a deal can get done and get done rather quickly. And I hope one does. I really, sincerely do. Anyway, that's going to be all for today's edition of Locked On Mets. For all you everydayers, a little rebranding on tomorrow's show for a Friday Farm Report. We're going to be Locked On Binghamton Rumble Ponies. Make sure you check out that show. Follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen every day. Now, for your second listen, check out Locked On MLB. And if you want to catch every pitch in the Mets hometown broadcast, you can do so with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Mets.